What if the single most disorienting moment of a European's entire life isn't a war, a breakup, or a funeral, but a Tuesday afternoon in an American parking lot? Stay with me these next few minutes. Hit like, follow now. This list will genuinely wreck your idea of normal. For thousands of European travelers, the United States doesn't register as a country when they land. It registers as an elaborate replica pulled directly off a movie screen. The blinding yellow school buses, the mailboxes standing guard at the end of every driveway, the wide-open wooden houses with absolutely nothing separating them from the road. All of it makes visitors feel like they've wandered into a Pixar film or a video game they forgot they were playing. But the real disorientation doesn't come from the buses or the houses. It comes from the technology. Self-driving Waymo taxis gliding silently down the boulevard, squat little delivery robots weaving around pedestrians on the sidewalk. They make British tourists feel like they've been fast-forwarded into the year 3000. Even the fact that you can vote, pull cash from an ATM, or pick up prescription medication without ever unbuckling your seatbelt is a level of convenience that most Europeans could never have dreamed up on their own. So it's time to drop the old assumptions and join us as we dig into why the version of life Americans call ordinary plays out like pure fantasy for the rest of the planet. Because once you've watched it unfold in person, the word normal barely fits what's actually happening. The moment Europeans step off an intercontinental flight, they don't feel like they've entered a different country. They feel like they've wandered, by accident, straight onto the set of a Hollywood production. One Englishman who relocated to America admitted that seeing a yellow school bus for the first time was one of the most thrilling parts of the whole move. And whenever he sees a European posting a TikTok gushing about a school bus, Americans always look baffled about why anyone would care. His answer is always the same one he gives back. Why do the Brits get so sentimental about the red double-deckers in London? It's the exact same thing. It's just public transport, but it means something because it's a signature piece of your own culture. Movies shape how people abroad picture America long before they ever set foot there. And an entire generation overseas grew up watching American films and quietly envying that lifestyle. The idea of getting picked up outside your own front door and driven to school each morning. He knows that probably sounds completely unremarkable to Americans, maybe even a little pathetic. But to Europeans, it's genuinely exciting. And yes, the TikToks and Instagram stories about a school bus are going to keep coming, so Americans just need to let this one thing go. Then there's the fire hydrant, a shiny red hydrant standing proudly on the sidewalk, something that, to a European, only ever existed inside the cartoon Up or the horror film It. Everything about the American street looks eerily familiar, and yet somehow completely foreign at the same time. One traveller showed off a fresh bruise, explaining, half laughing, that back in England, there's simply no such thing as a fire hydrant, so naturally, he walked straight into one and ended up with a massive bruise to show for it. He asked, half laughing, half genuinely curious, whether anyone else watching had ever done the exact same thing, and got an immediate, "Oh yeah, it's happened once or twice, it's fine," from the person filming with him. Both of them agreeing it was ridiculously painful in the moment, but joking that it's basically an initiation ritual that every newcomer to America has to go through eventually, whether they like it or not. Americans call it living an ordinary life. Europeans call it walking through a giant stage set. Take a stroll through any model suburb, and the first thing that shatters a British or French tourist's entire sense of personal security is the total absence of fences. No brick walls, no iron gates, nothing but stretch after stretch of lush green lawn connecting one house to the next like an endless green carpet. A kind of proud, deliberate exposure. Americans see this as a symbol of openness and trust, but to a European raised to think of home as a fortress, laying your entire private world bare along the street looks less like trust and more like sleepwalking through a security risk. One British transplant living in the American suburbs ran through a whole list of things you'd simply never see back home. Enormous fire hydrants that look exactly like the ones in the movies, the kind you can crack open in summer so they spray like a fountain. Storm drains so massive they look ripped straight out of that creepy movie, It. Older suburban men who somehow all resemble the grumpy old guy from Up. Oversized air conditioning units cooling entire houses, even though, as he pointed out, London's been brutally hot the last few summers, and Europe still barely has air conditioning anywhere. Patriotism plastered on practically every surface. Winding roads with no lane markings that are treated as completely normal. Road signs that somehow look like movie props. Houses with no perimeter fencing at all, their yards just melting into the neighbour's yard. University flags and gear treated like tribal symbols. A housing style he couldn't quite describe, but that just screamed American to him. For sale signs slapped with giant, shamelessly self-promotional photos of the real estate agents themselves, their faces plastered across billboards everywhere you look. Those distinctive wooden Adirondack chairs he'd fallen in love with, and basketball hoops bolted above practically every garage door, including his own now. If your fence vanished overnight, would you rush out to plant more grass? Or would you immediately install a security camera system? Because that sense of visual freedom turns out to be an expertly maintained illusion. The truth is that this so-called flawless garden aesthetic is quietly run by an underground authority known as the HOA. One European admitted that if you're American, you'll probably never relate to this, but for someone from overseas, all of it feels like walking straight into a movie set, right down to the little bench on the front porch and the American flag out front. And she could already picture the pumpkins that would show up there come autumn. A lot of Europeans grow up on a steady diet of American films, so scenery that Americans consider mundane feels drenched in nostalgia to outsiders, even if that makes zero sense to the Americans living inside it. In America, you may technically own the house, but the HOA owns your aesthetics. Forget to mow the lawn? Let the grass creep a few centimeters past the approved limit? Get ready to open a penalty letter in your mailbox. Want to repaint the porch? You'd better have submitted a formal application first. One British woman living in an HOA-controlled neighbourhood described how everyone is required to keep their lawns at a precise height and immaculately maintained, resulting in a street of picture-perfect front yards, something she said barely exists back in England. American flags, she noted, are everywhere out here, hanging from houses and mailboxes alike, something you basically never see with British flags back home. The most common house type in her American neighbourhood is a fully detached single-family home, a stark contrast to England, where most people live in townhouses or semi-detached houses. Fire hydrants, again, stood out to her as something totally absent from British streets, now sitting right out in the open all over her neighbourhood. The sheer scale of the roads and the cars took some adjusting to as well, since everything in America really is bigger. Though, after 6 weeks in the country, she said she and her family were finally starting to feel comfortable driving on the wide lanes. Palm trees, if they count as a cultural marker, are something Florida has in overwhelming supply, and she loved every one of them. Mailboxes standing outside every house instead of a letterbox by the door turned out to be a genuine upgrade for a household with dogs, since the mail carrier never actually approaches the front door, meaning far less barking. Basketball hoops mounted above garages felt like something lifted straight out of the movies. And yes, she confirmed, there really are brick houses in Florida too, in case anyone was wondering. Suburban houses out here look like miniature castles, complete with triple fireplaces, porches fitted with wooden swings, and garages the size of small apartments with basketball hoops for the kids. It all looks as pristine as a fairy tale postcard, except it's a fairy tale running on a very tight, very enforced program. One content creator pushed back hard against the idea that loving America is somehow a joke or an act of satire, insisting it's simply a great country full of opportunity, sunshine, friendly people, and incredible food, especially in California, including tacos that people apparently laugh at her for loving. She said it stings to have her genuine joy about living there dismissed as performance, especially after a 5-year immigration process just to get there and start a business. And she wanted to make clear that loving America, imperfections and all, is perfectly okay when you learn to appreciate the small things, like sitting on the porch. That level of perfection is so tightly controlled, it becomes almost unsettling. Americans take real pride in those quiet afternoons on the porch, iced tea in hand, smiling and waving at anyone who passes by. A warm sense of community. Or is it simply social surveillance wrapped in a friendly smile? The eeriest part is the sound, or rather, the total absence of it. The suburban streets stretch out wide and spotless, the sidewalks pristine, yet almost nobody is ever actually walking on them. No small European-style cars weaving through traffic. No chatter spilling out of corner cafes the way it does in Paris or Rome. Just the occasional hulking garbage truck rolling through to swallow up trash bags left out at the curb. The silence runs so deep that visitors start to wonder whether anyone is actually living inside these glossy houses at all, or whether the whole neighborhood is just a stage set of foam and paint. Would you be willing to pay hundreds of dollars in fines every month just for letting your lawn grow a little too long, in exchange for living inside a picture-perfect postcard? The obsessively tidy nature of these neighborhoods turns out to be just the visible tip of a much larger iceberg, because behind those ruler straight lawns sits an entire culture built on a single guiding principle: excess of scale. But exactly how oceanic is America, really, that it sends the rest of the world spinning into culture shock? That curtain is about to lift. If the American neighborhood already feels like stepping into a movie, then stepping onto the actual street is when a visitor falls headfirst into a land of giants. America didn't just adopt the concept of big, it invented an entirely new unit of measurement: American size. Start with what smacks you in the face immediately: the roads and the vehicles riding on them. One British driver called American roads absolutely staggering, admitting he wasn't even sure whether a claim he'd seen in a Facebook comment was true. Something about a 23-lane freeway somewhere in Texas, and begging viewers in the comments to confirm whether that could possibly be real, because just navigating traffic in Orlando, with cars zooming past on every side, already felt completely chaotic to him. Picture traveling from Europe straight into Texas and encountering a superhighway 24 lanes wide, or a supermarket parking lot so vast you could practically land a commercial jet in it, with so much space between parking spots that you can fling your car door wide open without coming anywhere near the vehicle next to you. One transplant said that being able to open his car door in a parking lot all the way without getting remotely close to hitting another car had become one of his favorite, oddly specific things about living in America, marveling at just how much space there really is. And what do Americans actually drive on those sprawling highways? Ford F-350s and hulking SUVs, towering vehicles roughly the size of a studio apartment. Standing next to one, even a fairly tall European tourist suddenly feels like a child. One pair of British creators went viral, hunting down what they called the coolest truck in America, gushing over a matte black beast that gave off serious Optimus Prime energy, admitting they genuinely didn't know whether to call it a truck, a lorry, or a semi, since semi means something completely different back in the UK. They had one of their friends stand next to it just to show off the scale, joking that it made her look absolutely tiny in comparison, practically swallowed whole by the thing, and wondering out loud how anyone would even climb up into a cab that high without a ladder. They begged viewers to send in photos of anything cooler they'd ever spotted, daring the comment section to try and beat it, because this matte black monster, discovered sitting in the middle of a Walmart parking lot of all places, was, in their words, the most beastly big black truck they had ever laid eyes on. And they weren't sure America had anything left in reserve that could top it. But oversized trucks are nothing compared to the consumer cathedrals waiting inside. Walking into a Walmart or a Costco isn't like walking into a supermarket. It's like walking into a self-contained megacity under one roof. Endless aisles of bread, washing machines, and dryers as large as wardrobes. Side-by-side refrigerators twice the size of the European standard. In one single checkout line, you can buy an 85-inch television, a full set of truck tires, and a 5-kilogram bag of beef. One visitor summed it up simply. American supermarkets are basically a whole shopping mall disguised as a grocery store, since inside the same building, you can eat, bank, shop, get an eye exam, get your nails done, and drop off or collect a package. And that's before anyone mentions Buc-ee's, America's now iconic highway rest stop. Hundreds of gas pumps stretching toward the horizon. Restrooms roughly the size of an international airport lobby. A 5-pump petrol station already feels enormous in England. In America, that's just the local corner store. One first-time visitor walked through the full experience for the camera, warning people to remember exactly where they parked because it's easy to get lost among 80-plus fuel pumps, praising the astonishingly spotless bathrooms, recommending newcomers grab a shopping cart because they'll inevitably end up buying far more than planned, and admitting the sheer scale of the place can feel intimidating at first. He pointed out the wall of beef jerky, boasting at least 20 different flavors available for sampling. The store's own branded candy, jams, sauces, and spices, an entire fridge of energy drinks and novelty sodas, a hot food counter serving everything from breakfast biscuits to burritos, fresh brisket carved to order, an entire dessert counter loaded with fudge, cookies, brownies, cupcakes, and the chain's famously beloved beaver nuggets snack. Plus, an outdoor section stocked with lawn chairs, canopies, and pool floats, joking that he had to leave before he blew his entire vacation budget in one stop. But the real shockwave hits at the dinner table. A single plate of food at an American restaurant isn't portioned for one person. It's portioned like it's meant to feed a small family. And the true peak of absurdity is the extra-large soda cup. One British visitor admitted, only half joking, that every plate of food he's ordered in America looks like it could feed a family of 4 for an entire week. And while he didn't want to lean too hard into lazy stereotypes, since plenty of them turn out to be nonsense, this particular one, he said, is absolutely rooted in reality. Because a large drink here comes out literally bigger than your own head, prompting him to ask, only half joking, whether the goal was death by Pepsi. The food itself, he admitted, is genuinely delicious. But there's so much of it that every single meal starts to feel like an endurance trial, since he doesn't want to waste it or seem ungrateful to the server. Yet no matter how much he eats, the plate never seems to actually get any emptier, until eventually he's forced to stop before he makes himself sick. One oversized cup alone holds nearly 1.5 liters of liquid packed with ice, bigger than a human head. And while a European tourist might nurse a single bottle of water for 3 straight days, an American will drain that same size cup in 10 minutes flat and casually walk up for a free refill. It's no longer really about portion size at that point. It's a whole philosophy of living. Better to have too much than too little. Does your stomach have the nerve to take on a soda bigger than your own skull? But the sheer size of everything is only half of the story. The other half is the ingenious system Americans invented to enjoy all of this abundance without ever having to leave the car. In Europe, wandering down a cobblestone street to pick up a fresh loaf of bread is treated as a cherished slice of daily life. In America, stepping out of the vehicle at all is treated as an unnecessary waste of energy. Welcome to drive-through paradise, where Americans have proven that a steering wheel and a driver can solve nearly every problem life throws at you. One British creator, filming from inside a restaurant, pointed out the drive-through lane running right alongside the dining room, joking that convenience always comes first, and marveling that you could order the exact same meal, Brussels sprouts included, whether you plan to eat in the car or carry it home. Elsewhere in the world, a drive-through means fast food. In America, he said, it's practically a religion of maximum comfort. And he was floored to discover an entire drive-through pharmacy, admitting Britain doesn't have anything close to that. Start with the logical uses first. Feeling sick? You can swing by the drive-through pharmacy to grab your prescription without ever touching a single germ-covered doorknob. An idea that earned a genuine nod of approval from British visitors. Need cash? Roll down your window at the drive-through ATM, reach out, and you're holding money within 30 seconds. One visitor marveled that America really does seem to have absolutely everything. But things start spiraling well past reasonable territory soon after. Want a bottle of whiskey for the evening? There's a drive-through liquor store waiting for you. Election season rolling around? Exercise your civic duty at a drive-through polling station. Ready to say your vows? Las Vegas is standing by with a drive-through wedding chapel, letting you get married through a car window before the engines even cooled down. One creator, after being challenged in his comment section to top his earlier list of only in America drive-thrus, pulled out his tablet and compiled an even more absurd rundown. Pharmacies, which he understood immediately, especially for parents with sick kids. Liquor stores, which genuinely confused him. Drive-through polling booths, which he found bizarre. Drive-through wedding chapels in what he assumed had to be Las Vegas, which he actually thought sounded kind of fun. Drive-through cinemas, which he figured had died out with the 90s, but apparently are still going strong. A rumoured drive-through broccoli dispenser, which he wasn't sure he believed. A supposed drive-through funeral viewing, which he flatly refused to believe was real. And finally, a rumoured drive-through blood donation service, which left him completely stumped as to how that would even physically work. From birth to old age, illness to death, he said, it seems like you can complete an entire human life cycle in America without the sole of your shoe ever touching the pavement. If a drive-through shower service ever launches, would you actually pull in? Perhaps the most jaw-dropping example for Europeans is the Starbucks drive-through line effect, with dozens of cars visibly inching forward for 20 minutes straight just to grab a single cup of coffee. One visitor filming the phenomenon admitted the line wasn't quite as long as he'd expected from the viral clips, but noted plenty of hype circulating on TikTok and Facebook was clearly what drew the crowd in the first place, since the videos of the queue were exactly what convinced his own group to go check it out themselves, estimating the wait at maybe an hour at the absolute max. Meanwhile, the parking lot right next door sat completely empty, and the counter inside the store, where the same order would take barely 2 minutes, stood deserted. It's no longer a time-saving habit at that point. It's a genuine, borderline compulsive addiction to comfort. Europeans call it out as pure laziness, one contributing factor, they argue, to rising obesity rates. Americans see it as optimizing every second of their day down to the last detail. Whatever you want to call it, there's no denying America has turned the car into a second skin for its people. Would you rather sit patiently in your car for 20 minutes or walk 2 minutes into the actual store? Yet sitting lazily behind the wheel is still, relatively speaking, 20th century technology, because in modern American cities, people are now outsourcing that same convenience to algorithms and machines entirely. If drive-through culture already makes America feel like it's optimizing laziness itself, stepping onto its tech-driven avenues will make you ask whether you're even living in the same century anymore. For a European tourist landing in San Francisco or Phoenix, the moment a Jaguar rolls past with a completely empty driver's seat, its steering wheel turning on its own, reality flips upside down. That's not a movie special effect. That's a Waymo self-driving taxi, delivering a jolt of pure excitement mixed with the unnerving sensation of trusting your life to an algorithm. Barely recovered from that shock, look down at the sidewalk and you'll spot squat little delivery robots patiently waiting at the crosswalk before confidently rolling along to drop off a hot burrito directly to a customer's door. Or inside the supermarket, tall, gangly robots gliding silently between the shelves, just to flag a single drop of spilled water on the floor. Americans, it seems, don't wait around for the future to arrive. They simply buy it and slot it straight into daily life. Would you be brave enough to climb into a taxi with absolutely no driver and let an algorithm navigate rush hour traffic on your behalf? But American-style innovation isn't limited to fictional-feeling gadgets out on the street. The real culture shock is waiting right inside the kitchen. Ask any European what unnerves them most about an American kitchen, and the answer is almost always the garbage disposal built into the sink. For the British or French, raised to carefully sort every scrap of organic waste into a separate bin, watching Americans casually shove chicken bones, orange peels, and leftover food straight down the drain, flip a switch, and listen to the blades grind it all into oblivion feels like something close to dark magic. If you found this interesting, don't forget to hit like, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe with notifications turned on so you never miss the next one, since your support is what keeps videos like this one coming. Please keep in mind that everything in this video was compiled from the personal experiences, opinions, and shared stories of individual travelers and their perspectives on popular culture. It's intended purely for entertainment and the exchange of casual social observation, and it does not represent every single individual or institution in either the United States or Europe. As always, we'd encourage you to look into anything here further and draw your own